Hello and welcome back. Under the Lens has returned from its hiatus, and in our return show, a new guest, a new friend is joining us at Draft Ortiz, Robert Ortiz. My friend, how are you doing today?
Not bad. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. It's pretty much the weekend, so I'm happy.
I know how it is.
Today we're going to be looking at Ole Miss left tackle Laremy Tunsil, and obviously we're looking for prospects to watch, and you went with him. So what about Tunsil stood out to you?
For a kid who's, I think, barely turning 20 this year, his technique, for one, is off the charts. I was talking with Duke Manyweather at Big Duke 50 on Twitter, and I think we both agreed that he compares very favorably to Seahawks left tackle Russell Okung, with the only thing being that I think he has better technique than the four-year vet and a former All-Pro. He's just absolutely phenomenal in all facets of the game.
And we have your piece on him linked in the description. So people be sure to check that out. But one thing you talked about is, people like to see offensive tackles just basically pass rush, did they win or lose? But really, there's so much more that goes into it. You mentioned technique. So how important is technique for an offensive tackle? And how vital is it to see where Tunsil is, how advanced he is as 20 years old?
Technique is everything for an offensive tackle. If you look at Joe Thomas of the Cleveland Browns, his technique is off the charts. It's probably the best I've ever seen. And, you see him handle guys like J.J. Watt with ease. He's not the biggest offensive tackle. He's not the quickest. He's not the strongest. But his demeanor and his technique are what wins him every single rep.
And today we'll be looking at Tunsil versus Alabama. So, let's get into it. And just before we get into it, actually, one quick thing. Everyone be sure to follow Robert on Twitter at Draft Ortiz. He's one of the best followers out there. Not only talking about offensive line, but just all prospects in general. Be sure to follow him. Good dude. And he also had good Tinder tweets, which made it even more fun. All right, so let's jump into this game. Laremy Tunsil versus Alabama.
I believe it's this play here against Ryan Anderson. No. Okay. The first thing you see off the bat is Tunsil's movement skills are just phenomenal. Everything he does, he makes it look easy. This play right here, you see him, he gets punched in the chest really well by that defensive end from Alabama. I'm not sure which one it was, but he has the ability to redirect and re-anchor without any problems. That play right there, Tunsil shows off. He has perfect technique. Kick step is fantastic. His punch, his hand timing is great. If you look here, you see that he doesn't let his hands die. He's always fighting, always trying to keep his the defensive end's hands down, and basically just keep control on the defensive end the entire way through. Just seeing him out in space is another thing. You can argue that, okay, maybe he missed a couple blocks, but obviously that wasn't his assignment. But he does a fantastic job in space. His athleticism for a guy who's almost 310 pounds is phenomenal.
Well, that goes to something that we're seeing now in the NFL with more athletic pass rushers. You're going to see better athletes at offensive tackle, and he's exactly what they're looking for.
Oh, most definitely. You see guys like Tyron Smith, guys that are kind of redefining the tackle position athleticism-wise, and he's just a next in that line, honestly. The only issue I had with him, and it showed up a few times, and I highlighted it in a piece that I wrote, he has a tendency to fall off blocks in the run game, mostly due to little technique issues, usually getting his head on the wrong side of the player. Normally, you'd want to cut the defender off from the play, whereas he has a tendency to kind of get his head on the wrong side, leaving the defender free. That once he breaks the grip of Tunsil, he's just got it free lane to the running back. And it's little things like that that he can work on, and it just shows that he's not a finished product, and he still has upside. But it's little things that he does need to work on. I'm hoping to see improvement this year in that regard.
Now, if you're an offensive line coach working with him, how are you helping him improve in those areas?
It's all it is repetition. It's just he's got to realize the situation where if it's a run to my right, I need to cut that defender off. So my head should be on the right side of his body, and I should be basically using my body to cut him off. He has a tendency where if he's on the back side of the play, he'll kind of get a little lazy with his blocking, especially in the run game. I mean, in the pass game it's a little different, but in the run game, he'll get a good pop, he'll get good movement, and then he'll get 2 or 3 steps, and then okay, the play's not coming to my side, just kind of fall off a little bit. And it's just little things like that that can frustrate you, not only as an evaluator but as a coach. But it's also little things like that that are easy to fix, just with the time it takes.
And tons of those names are often thrown as one of the top offensive tackles of this class, along with Stanley from Notre Dame. For you, what's the difference between those two that gives either Stanley or Tunsil the advantage?
I haven't gone in depth on Stanley yet. I'm actually currently writing an article on him for NFLmocks.com. So I've just barely started getting into his film. But I think the main difference so far is their athleticism by far. Tunsil is one of the most athletic prospects I've seen in some time. Whereas Stanley, his game relies more on power, angles. He's a very smart player. So he knows how to work his angles and pass pro in the run game. He's very tenacious when it comes to blocking. But I think that athleticism is what sets him apart, and the fact that I would say Tunsil has better technique. And it's not just that. I would say Tunsil also has a higher ceiling. Not to say that Stanley isn't a great player, because he's easily a potential top 10 prospect. But I think that Tunsil's room for growth is beyond any that I've seen in at least the past 2 draft classes. And one thing that was pointed out to me about Tunsil, pointed out yesterday by at DraftTJC on Twitter, Tanner, he pointed out, and he was watching some film on Tunsil, and Tunsil, he said, seems to have a problem with combo blocks. Says he has a tendency to kind of fall off the combo blocks and things like that. They're easy to fix. It's really just staying in sync with whoever you're combo blocking with. It can be something that, if you have a new person starting next to you, or a new blocking scheme, it does take some time getting used to. And it could be little things like that. I personally didn't notice it more than once or twice, but it is there, and it is something to watch out for. But it's just like his other problems that he has. It's just little things that need repetition more than anything else.
Well, that goes to nothing mentioned. I mean, he's still so young. So just as he gets these more repetitions, his ceiling is phenomenal. Even as you mentioned, I mean, we could be talking about potential all-pro left tackle.
Oh yeah, most definitely. His ceiling is much similar to Tyron Smith's. I mean, that would probably be another good comparison for him movement-wise, because they're not massive players. They both come in about 6'5", 305 pounds. Their movement skills, their technique, the way they use their hands, all that ties in, and it makes them very similar prospects, honestly. with Tunsil, another thing that I really would worry about with him is, he has a history of injuries. I know he lost a few games to his freshman year to injury. His sophomore year, I'm sure most people know he ended it with a broken leg in the bowl game. So that's also going to slow his development. And it's just another thing to watch out for. I mean, are these fluke injuries? Are they, things that are going to become a problem down the road? Are you willing to take that risk? And I mean, personally, I'd take the risk. He's a fantastic player, but at the same time, you got to be aware of things like that.
Well, the injuries also do remind you of Okung, who's past few years dealt with some injuries.
No, most definitely. I know when he was coming out in the draft, many compared him to Walter Jones of the Seahawks, who he was replacing. And he had that similar upside. He was a fantastic prospect, good size, good athleticism. But the difference with him is he didn't show, if I remember correctly, I don't remember him having major injury red flags coming out of college. For him, it's just constant ankle injuries, foot injuries. And, as an offensive tackle, that's a big problem.
And is there a particular offense, just scheme-wise, that you think Tunsil would fit best in, or you think he can all match in all?
I mean, personally, I think he can match anywhere. I'd love to see him in his zone blocking system. It gets him, on the move. It utilizes his athleticism perfectly. Similar to what, Ole Miss runs. They do a good amount of combo blocking, but it's a lot of reach, a lot of zone. And I think he'd be fantastic in an offense like that in the NFL. Similar to the Seahawks, teams like that where, they're a very move-based offense. Seahawks, Cowboys, and personally, if he could go to a team like that can utilize his strengths to the best of their advantage, I think we could easily see a guy who's an All-Pro his first year.
One thing we definitely talked about is ceiling, just because obviously not all players develop. So if he just hits his floor, what do you think his floor is in the NFL?
I mean, his floor right now, I'd say he'd be above guys like Matt Khalil, the Minnesota Vikings. I think he'd be better than him floor-wise. He could step in and start and be a solid starter for quite a lot of teams across the league. I mean, he could go to the Steelers, the Giants, the Buccaneers, things like that.
And with their left tackle issues.
Say it again?
I think you could even argue Green Bay with Bakhtiari's issues at times.
Yeah, most definitely. Honestly, coming out of college, I thought Bakhtiari came out early. He shouldn't have come out. He's a good athletic player, but I don't think he's a left tackle in the NFL. And I think he's playing out of necessity for Green Bay. I mean, if Tunsil were to go to Green Bay, if he were to fall that far, which I don't see it happening, but if he did, Green Bay would be set for the next 10 years.
So obviously you have a lot of experience with the offensive line. Just watching this, when you're watching the offensive line process, what are some of the big things you're looking for?
One thing you want to look for, obviously, is his footwork. How is it clean? Is it smooth? Is it something where you're just looking at it and you just go, okay, that just seems off? I know I've watched Laremy Clark of Texas Tech. I watched his game against Oklahoma State, and you're looking at it, and you just watch his footwork, and you're just confused. It doesn't seem right. You compare it to a guy like Tunsil, his footwork it's smooth. It's he's got very quick feet, very active feet. He knows how to work his angles. His hands, his punch, his timing is fantastic. If you look, he knows how to wash a defender upfield, no problem, and leaves a perfect running lane for Bo Wallace right there. His hands are another big deal. His punch, he has a very good punch. It basically stonewalls the defender when he gets contact. And another thing is that he doesn't let his hands die. And, lots of times young offensive tackles, they'll punch and then they let their hands die. They lock on, and the defender keeps fighting, once the defender breaks the hold, he's got a clear lane, and offensive tackle's kind of just stuck. That's just little things like that that you want to look for at offensive tackle. I know one other problem I highlighted with Tunsil is when he goes against speed rushers, it's something you notice in the LSU game, not so much against Alabama because they don't have speed rushers, but when it comes to going up against a guy who's an obvious speed rusher, such as Daniil Hunter from LSU, he's with the Vikings now. Tunsil had a tendency to anticipate an upfield rush from Hunter, and you saw it a couple times in the LSU game where he'll set a little wider and a little deeper, expecting that outside rush, and it leaves a clear lane to the quarterback inside. And Hunter took advantage of it a few times, and the only reason Tunsil managed to recover was because of his athleticism and his quick feet. I think one thing I really do like about Tunsil is his base. For a guy who's been known as a bit of a finesse tackle at times, he does have a very good base. When being matched up with a defender who's basically a power defender such as A'Shawn Robinson from Alabama, Jeremy Reed, guys like that, he has a very solid base to absorb any blows. He can redirect real easily, and he has no problem taking on guys who may be stronger than him because of his technique. And there's a perfect example of it. He swallows up that defender, takes a blow, and settles in his base, basically nullifying any strength that defender has. One thing I do like about Tunsil is his ability to use his leverage to his advantage. He's got about average size for the offensive tackle position. He's listed at 6'5", 305 pounds. And Ryan Anderson from Alabama, Jeremy Reed from Alabama, both those guys are 6'3", and they do have natural leverage on them. But Tunsil has he has the ability to get under the pads of those players, guys like that who are maybe shorter than him, have natural leverage on him. He has the ability to get under their pads and nullify any strength that they can have.
Lower man runs.
Exactly. And Tunsil does a fantastic job of being the lower man every time. And one thing I was taught all throughout high school, as well as at RCC, one thing you learn is your first step is what's going to tie you. The second step is what's going to win in the battle. So Tunsil does a very good job of being the first one to get his second foot down. So when he's pass protecting, he's got very quick feet, and it allows him to win that battle because the defender's still coming off the ball. He's still gaining momentum. Tunsil's already settled. Tunsil's already got his hands locked on, and he's able to redirect and control that defender any way he wants due to his quick feet and his technique. Another thing I want to point out in regards to Tunsil is he may be a young player. He's 19 his sophomore season at Ole Miss, but his football IQ for guys so young is really quite fantastic. He has no problem when it comes to stunts, picking up stunts. He doesn't bite on the fake. He doesn't bite on the defensive end going in on the stunt. He does a very good job of staying square, knowing his assignment, and taking that outside rusher. Whether it's coming from a defensive tackle position, whether it's coming from an outside linebacker position, he knows his assignments and he knows how to execute them properly without biting on twists, on stunts, on fakes. He's a very patient player, which is a big deal when it comes to offensive tackles.
Well, definitely. I think we still see NFL starting offensive tackles who don't have that mental IQ, who don't pick up their assignment. It's just so seeing a 20-year-old do this is incredible.
Yeah, it's a great thing to see. It lets you know that his floor as a player is very high. Because he may not, say something happens, he doesn't pan out in the NFL. He'll still be a solid starter purely due to his IQ and his technique. He may not be that all-pro that I see that he can be, but his technique and his mental acuity and his ability are going to keep him at a solid starter level through his entire career.
You did mention that he's probably one of the best offensive tackle prospects you've seen in recent years. Who are other names who would be just near him?
Tyron Smith, first and foremost. I mean, it was interesting when he came out because he played right tackle for USC. He was listed at 285 on their roster. I know he was about 255 coming out of high school. So, his athleticism wasn't a question mark. It was, would he be able to translate at his size? He came into combine at 305 was a huge deal. But even then, the questions were, if he was this great top 10 offensive tackle or top 10 prospect, why was he playing right tackle? And, people argued, okay, they had Matt Khalil at left tackle. He was a fantastic prospect himself. So they said that, if Matt Khalil or if Tyron Smith is a top 10 player, Matt Khalil is obviously a top 5 player. And seeing now, Tyron Smith is arguably the top left tackle in the game, and Matt Khalil, he's kind of just an average player. And, I don't blame that on his talent. Matt Khalil is fantastic talent. It's just little things that he needs to work on that, are holding him back. But, I think you've got guys like Matt Khalil who has a prospect was, a top 5 guy in his class. Tyron Smith, guys like that as prospects I probably would have put over Laremy Tunsil. And, it's just guys that, just go to show how good they are, how good they could be, and how good Tunsil could be, how high his ceiling is.
And again, we're here with Robert Ortiz on Twitter at Draft Ortiz. And obviously, be sure to check out his piece on Tunsil. We have a link in the description for this, so be sure to watch it and check it out. And so let's say I'm GM, you're the head scout. We have a third overall pick, Tunsil's there. Convince me why we should take Tunsil third overall.
I mean, honestly, there's no reason you shouldn't. Unless you have some sort of pressing need that, okay, quarterback. We need a quarterback, and a guy like, Jared Goff is there. A guy like, say Hackenberg, who a lot of people love, is there. Those are maybe the only guys I would put over Tunsil, and that's purely because you need a franchise quarterback in the NFL. Outside of that, Tunsil could be a guy who could battle with Joey Bosa for the top lineman in the class. And Bosa himself is a fantastic prospect. I see no reason why you wouldn't want to go after Tunsil unless you're the Cowboys and you have Tyron Smith at left tackle as it is. He's a fantastic prospect. His athleticism, his technique, his strength, his mental acuity, his football IQ is all there. There's no reason he shouldn't be a perennial All-Pro for the next 10 years.
Beautiful. And just before we wrap up, for any aspiring people like watching these prospects, any final notes on watching offensive tackles for them to just key in on?
You always want to look at how comfortable a guy is. His movements, are they fluid? His strength, is it there? When he's engages with the defender driving him back, the defender shocking him off his base. All those little things, they'll tell you, how comfortable he is at that position. His strength, you want to look at his technique, his hand placement. There's a lot of little things that go into it that a lot of people don't realize because all they see is, okay, he's there, stand in front of the guy, make sure he doesn't sack the quarterback. You want to look at his footwork, his technique, his strength, how he works his angles and pass pro. if he's setting too wide, if he's setting too short. There's a lot of little things that it really takes time to learn, but once you learn, you'll start seeing things that you'll start understanding why, guys like Matt Khalil are having problems, or guys like Tyron Smith are just such fantastic players. Guys like Joe Thomas are such fantastic players. It's the little things that they do that set them apart from everybody else, and it's the little things that you have to watch out for.
And under the lens has done a lot of quarterbacks, linebackers, shorts, but I'm glad to get back into offensive tackles. I mean, as a former offensive lineman, it just tugs at my. I just love it to see the guys in the trenches. It's fun to see, and obviously at Draft Ortiz, Robert Ortiz, definitely want to have you again. It was phenomenal having you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for watching On the Lens. The show's hiatus is over. More episodes are coming with Derek, with Robert Ortiz, Ian Wharton at NFL Film Study. I want to thank you all for watching, and be sure to follow Robert at Draft Ortiz. Thank you for watching.